All right, we're live.
We
Hello,
are live.
everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are live on Women Who Lift Israel with a special guest, Talia Schubert. Thank you so much, Talia, for joining us today.
So fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, to intro everyone to our group, my name is Sarah, and I'm the co-founder of Women Who Lift Israel. We are a women-only Facebook community focused on empowering women through strength training. And we started these live interviews because we wanted to be able to give all of the wonderful women in our community plenty of inspiration, motivation, advice, and tips from professionals and athletes in the field. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with Talia today.
Me too. I love
For
having this
those of
conversation.
For those of you who don't know Talia, Talia is a registered nurse and the founder of Organic Fertility. And since I started to follow her on Facebook, I've been blown away from all of the knowledge she has shared about Fertility Awareness Method. It helps women understand their cycles better and be empowered by it. And I'm personally turning 40 next month, and I really hoped I had all this information earlier in life, but I'm still very grateful that I have her and her content available. And so really, we're really excited here on Women Who Lift Israel to welcome her and to have her share her knowledge with the community. So thank you, Talia, again for joining.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here. It's so much fun.
Okay, so Talia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, when did you move
Yeah,
to Israel, what do you do?
totally. So I'm originally from New York. I moved to Israel in August 2017, so almost 4 years ago, after I studied nursing in New York at NYU. And then I worked there
Mhm.
for a little bit as a nurse. But then I came here in 2017 and I started working here as a nurse as well. And then I basically found this like love. I learned about the fertility awareness method. I basically discovered it, and as soon as I discovered it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to know everything about it, and I need to tell like everyone I know. Like, how did I not know about this? How does everyone not know about this?" So I basically read like every book out there and
Wow.
studied it, and then yeah, and now I'm here. And now what do I do? A question? Is that a question?
Yeah, what do you do?
Okay,
I
what do
know
I do?
that you stopped being a nurse very
I
recently.
stopped being a nurse. Exactly. I was working at Maccabi as a nurse. I worked at 𝗧𝗹𝗶 also. I've been like all over the place as a nurse. I've been a nurse for like 5 years, and I've worked in like all different settings. Um, but then I basically stopped working at Maccabi about 3 weeks ago, something like that, because thank God that my business, my fertility awareness method business, has basically been doing really well, and I was able to quit my job and
I
do
get
that full
it.
time, which is like amazing. It like feels incredible, and I'm so happy to be doing this. So now I basically teach women about their cycles. I teach them about how it works, how to learn how to know when they're fertile, how to know when they're not fertile, how to use this method as birth control, how to use this method to optimize conception, how to use this method to just understand their bodies and connect with themselves. So
Wow,
that's basically what I do now, and it's like the best.
amazing.
Yeah,
So before we get into what is fertility awareness method, I want to like just take a step back to see if you can give us, a crash course on the women's cycle, like women's cycle 101. So
totally. It's
what
a
are
really
the
good
different
question.
stages? Yeah, like what are the
Totally.
different stages of the cycle and how long do they typically last? And what are some keys, things that we should know for each phase?
Totally. So it's hard to say exactly the length, but I'll give like kind of a generalization because obviously everyone's cycle is different. Um, but basically, we start with menstruation. I mean, I always start there because that's the part that everyone knows is you bleed, and that's the one that everyone's like, oh, I know that part. So we'll start there. So basically, after you bleed, at some point after you bleed, your body's going to be like, okay, I think I'm ready to start gearing up to release an egg at ovulation. So our body's going to start working, and there's going to be an egg inside of our ovary that's going to be growing and maturing. And eventually it will release at ovulation, which happens at some point in our cycle. It's hard to say when, that phase is kind of always fluctuating. We basically have
Mm-hmm.
menstruation, and at some point our body's going to start gearing up to release this egg. And then eventually it finally does release this egg at ovulation. The egg is released from our ovary. And then following ovulation, we have something called the luteal phase. And sorry, I'm trying to figure out how detailed to get, but basically then following
Go
ovulation,
for
we have
it.
something called, no, it's okay. We have something called the luteal phase. And that's basically when our body, the egg has been released. And now our body's kind of like maintaining the status quo, trying to see, was there implantation? Was there an egg that was fertilized and that was now implanted in the uterus that will lead to a pregnancy, or was there not? And that's going to eventually lead to menstruation again. So that's kind of the basic cycle. I don't know, I mean, I'm trying to think of, I think I'm going to go there, but like basically people kind of um, give these phases, these kind of different phases of the cycle kind of correlate to different seasons, where I'm sure a lot of people could also relate to the fact that menstruation is oftentimes called, I mean, it is called the inner winter, because it's this kind of like internal hibernation cocoon type of state. And then
Mm-hmm.
slowly after menstruation, we basically have, we're kind of slowly leaving that cocoon and we kind of enter that inner spring phase where we might start having energy return to us. We're kind of starting to be a little bit more like, it's kind of this spring energy of like playfulness. And you start going out a little bit more of your cocoon. And that all kind of eventually leads to your inner summer, which, as you can imagine, inner summer is this like vibrant, magnetic time, which like lots of energy and beauty and light. And that inner summer is ovulation time. And that basically transition from the spring and the summer is basically the egg inside the ovary as it grows and grows and grows and eventually gets released at ovulation. That's kind of this like spring summer seasons. And then following that burst of like ovulation energy, which I'm going to get into maybe a little bit later, we basically move into our luteal phase, which is post ovulation until the next menstruation, which is called the inner autumn, which is also a little bit more of like, at the beginning of it, you still might have that kind of like high ovulation energy because you're still weaning off of that as you enter your luteal phase post ovulation. And then as you start approaching menstruation again, usually you'll start seeing your energy start to dwindle a little bit. And this is when women start to, start to experience PMS or, moodiness or start feeling like so many different things once you start tuning into it.
Right
Sometimes
before you get your menstruation? Is
exactly, right
that
before the
phase?
bleed is that PMS time that not everyone experiences, but people could feel breast tenderness, people could feel, headaches or migraines or moodiness or feeling angry. And that's kind of what happens there right before menstruation happens again. So that's kind of the cycle. And a lot of what I teach about is kind of understanding that one woman as that we're cyclical beings, that we're not supposed to be the same every single day. Our body literally moves through like month to month. We move in one cycle, we go through all these different phases and all these different ups and downs and ebbs and flows and these changes. We go through this whole process of like this lower energy menstruation up through this big ovulation phase and then back to this waning energy of until you get to your menstruation again. So one is that we're constantly changing, and the other thing, hold on, I had another thing. Oh, is that it really, once you start learning about this and kind of tuning into, or kind of even understanding that there's a framework that we're not supposed to be the same every single day, you start learning like, oh, what does my body need every day? What does my body need during my menstrual phase? What does my body need during my premenstrual phase? When people start feeling that PMS coming on, like, what do I need during that time? And really honoring that and not just kind of trying to be the same every single day, but really embracing the fact that we are cyclical. We're not supposed to work the same. We're not supposed to be the same. We're not supposed to train the same, which I'm sure we'll get to every single day. Does that make sense?
It does. So when they say like a woman's experiencing PMS and like she's in a bad mood or whatever, like what is happening that is making us in a bad mood, for example?
It's a really good question.
And I don't know
So
if it's just like I don't know if it's like true that we're like prone to be in bad moods like at that time, or it's just like what people
yeah.
say, or yeah.
Well, basically what's happening like hormonally in our cycle is that basically when our body is growing this egg and eventually releasing the egg at ovulation is when we have this big increase in the hormone estrogen. So that hormone estrogen, which also gives us a lot of energy, that's where a lot of this big spring summer energy comes from around ovulation time, is because this estrogen has a lot of energy to it. So that's the hormone estrogen is rising. And then once we ovulate, the hormone progesterone becomes the dominant hormone. And progesterone, as we're kind of getting towards the end of our cycle, it eventually will start dropping. And basically, as we're approaching menstruation, our hormonal levels get to like really low, and we're kind of having this like like our hormone levels are dropping, which is kind of on a
Mm.
hormonal level why some people might be experiencing that. But then like on another part, when you kind of look at it in more of like the I don't know if the word's metaphysical or whatever the word is, but oftentimes I mean I always think that PMS has such a bad rep that people like are just like, oh, I'm PMSing, I'm this, and they kind of almost like it comes with so much negativity, you know, like it's almost like this way of like we see these things happening to us, like we see these us being angry, or we see us being like moody or whatever it is that people are feeling, and we immediately start being like angry with ourselves of like, oh, why do I feel that way, or like, oh, that's so annoying, that's so this. And I find it working with a lot of my clients that I kind of talk to about this, um, is that the more that you allow yourself to feel whatever it is and to let yourself be cyclical and to let yourself feel that PMS, you know, if you're feeling
Hmm.
moody, let yourself feel it, you know, let yourself be there, and maybe like slow down, maybe like write about how you're feeling, like be like, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and like they, and let me now like think about maybe why I'm feeling this way, you know, because also there is like some piece of this time of like the premenstrual phase where like that PMS comes up, that people oftentimes say that it is this time where like a lot of truth comes out. It's like this time when like we do have this like
Okay.
in this like spiritual sense, there's like a lot of truth. So oftentimes a lot of this like feelings that are coming up for us, maybe it's like a good time to look into these and not as opposed to being angry at them, which will like kind of intensify that PMS, to kind of like
Mm.
listen to it, slow down a little bit and be like, what is this trying to tell me? Because like what I always like to say is that our body's not out to get us. It always has something to teach us. And like the more we allow that and the more that we like sit down, listen to our body, say, I wonder what you're trying to tell me. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should rest a little bit more. I think it like always helps. So, yeah.
Wow, that was so powerful, and we've only been live 11 minutes. I can't wait for the
Oh, you're so nice to me.
rest. Amazing.
Oh, oh.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about the fertility awareness method? I'm gonna start calling it FAM because I can't
Yeah,
pronounce it so well.
totally. Call it
But
fam.
so like most women, I believe, like have never heard of it. Like, what are the basics of FAM, and how do you figure out when your fertile window is open or closed? Can you give us the basics?
Totally. So basically, the way it kind of works is that, well, first of all, I just want to say is that, like, I know that we spoke about this at the beginning, and I'm just gonna say that, like, whoever's listening to this, like, and like you might be feeling like, why did no one tell me this? Like, it's normal. I don't know why no one told us this. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna tell you now. So,
Mm.
so basically, the way that the fertility awareness method works is that it basically you understand where you are in your cycle. You understand when you're fertile and when you're not, based on there's really two main fertility signs. So the first one is cervical mucus, which oftentimes people call discharge, or people call it cervical fluid, but it's oftentimes that's kind of the thing that probably in your lifetime you've called it discharge. Um, and the other one is our basal body temperature. So the way that it basically works, like the kind of mechanics of it, is that, like, remember at the beginning, I was mentioning that as our egg is growing inside of our ovary, it starts producing the hormone estrogen as we're kind of leading up towards ovulation. So basically, estrogen rises and rises as we get closer to ovulation, and it not only kind of grows the egg, but it also tells our cervix to start producing cervical mucus, which is pretty cool. So basically, I always tell my clients that when you see cervical mucus, don't say like, I mean, you could, but like, you don't just say, ew, gross, what is this? It's like, whoa, this is so cool. I see cervical mucus, which means like, I now know that my egg inside of my ovary is now growing and trying to gear up to eventually ovulate. And I'm fertile right now. So basically, I mean, I'll get to that in a second about how to know when you're fertile, but basically, we start seeing cervical mucus as our body's gearing up to ovulate, up through until the time it does ovulate. And then post ovulation, when
And
progesterone
but
becomes,
just one question. Sorry, how what does cervical mucus look like? Because we might
um,
not know how it looks like.
totally.
Yeah.
So it basically, I mean, essentially, how to really describe it is that it's really the discharge that you see coming out of your vagina. It could look creamy, lotiony. It could look more stretchy, slippery, clear. People call it egg white cervical mucus. Is that like it's called like peak cervical mucus, which is the one you see like right before ovulation. So that's kind of what it could look
Hmm.
like. How do you know if it's cervical mucus or it's something else? If it has a smell to it, if you're having pain, then you might be like, wait, maybe this is an infection. But anything else you're seeing is cervical mucus. Um, so that's that. And you basically just see it when you wipe. on a
Got
toilet
it.
paper. You like wipe from front to back, you look at your tissue and you see what's there. So basically, so that's kind of how you know when you're approaching ovulation, is this kind of, you're starting to see cervical mucus, and you see it for a bunch of days up through when you finally ovulate. Then the cervical mucus will disappear because our body starts producing the hormone progesterone, and progesterone basically dries up the cervical mucus. And it also causes our metabolism to increase, which then basically raises our basal body temperature, which is basically our waking temperature. Like when you wake up in the morning, you like stick a thermometer under your tongue and you see what your temperature is. And the way this kind of would look on a chart, I wish I had a chart with me, but basically you'll basically be seeing, as your body's gearing up to ovulate through ovulation, you'll see basically cervical mucus for a bunch of days, and then eventually that will go to dryness. And this will more or less line up with basically body temperatures that are kind of in like a low range, and then eventually jump up and stay high until the end of that cycle. So you're basically, when you're kind of understanding where ovulation is, you'll be seeing this change from cervical mucus to dryness that lines up with this low temperatures that then jumps up to a high temperature with that like temperature shift. So that's kind of like the basics of the method and how it works in regards to our hormones. And then when you kind of understand when you're fertile, the little secret is that you're only fertile when you have cervical mucus. Obviously, don't take this and use it as birth control right now, because there are a lot of rules and a lot of things you need to understand. But you're basically only fertile when you have cervical mucus. And then once you ovulate and the egg has been released, the egg in our basically goes into our fallopian tube from the ovary. It sits there for 12 to 24 hours. After 24 hours, if there was no sperm to kind of meet that egg, and why am I forgetting the word? Fertilization. If there was no fertilization between the sperm and the egg is just going to dissolve after 24 hours. So once that egg is dissolved after 24 hours, there is no more egg to be released that cycle, which is basically why, if you're using this obviously for birth control, it's really possible, because you're literally not fertile without cervical mucus. And if you're looking to using it to get pregnant, it's also really important, because oftentimes women are having lots of sex, but they're completely missing that window, completely missing it. So that's kind of a little basic about what the fertility awareness method is.
So if you're trying to get pregnant, what is the exact window that you're supposed to be looking for? Like, you talked about like when there's no more mucus and the basal temperature goes up. Is it right before that, or exactly then?
Well, you're basically, so sperm could live inside of cervical mucus for up to 5 days, which is like pretty awesome. And this is something I always like to share for, especially I'm sure women here who are maybe trying to conceive. Ovulation predictor kits, which like oftentimes people buy when they're trying to get pregnant, and they're peeing on tons and tons of sticks, and there's like sometimes a positive, sometimes not. It's like super confusing. Ovulation predictor kits basically give you 24 to 36 hour notice before the egg is released. So you get this like tiny window before the egg is released, and it's possible you pee on it in the morning, but then you like go to work for the day. So then you don't even actually get to, like have sex until maybe that evening, and then you have, maybe one chance to like get pregnant that cycle. But when you learn the method, and you know that sperm could survive for up to 5 days, you have like a good chunk of time of like fertile days that you could be using to hopefully optimize chances of conception. And basically the thing about it, the like other little caveat about it is that you don't know when you're going to ovulate. You just don't know when that's going to happen. Some people could have 10 days of cervical mucus. So just because you have cervical mucus on day 1 doesn't mean that that's going to last until you actually ovulated. Which is why you kind of cross-check it with the temperatures and seeing that your temperature did rise. And what I always tell people is that this really is so, so, so helpful for women who are like trying to conceive, also for birth control, obviously, but for women who are trying to conceive, and they are able to see, like, did I even have sex in my fertile window? Like, is it even worth it for me to take a pregnancy test at the end of my cycle? Like, should I even expect a positive pregnancy test, or did I totally miss it this cycle? And like, that's okay. But like, these are things that like, when women learn this method for conception, they now are aware of what's going on and they know what to expect. It's not just like you're blindly taking pregnancy tests. And like, just the last thing I'll say about it is that also women with irregular cycles, that's something that also could be really challenging with trying to conceive. And basically what this method basically gives you is you see exactly when you do ovulate. So even if you have a 40-day, if it's you ovulate on day 40, on day 35, you're not like, oh my gosh, I start taking pregnancy tests because like it's day 35, like my period's late. But in reality, maybe you haven't even ovulated yet until day 40. And that could happen, not just with women with hormonal imbalances, but also for women who are stressed, who are traveling, who are sick. These things could all delay ovulation. And these things could be so confusing for women who are trying to get pregnant and are seeing super, super late ovulations, or just are getting their, they're like, my cycle's so late, I'm missing my period. But really, you're not. You just had very delayed ovulation. And this is the same thing with birth control also. Women who also are like, for example, maybe using condoms or using whatever barrier method they're using. And they're like, why is it day 45 and I still haven't gotten my period? Like, but like, why am I not, I'm not pregnant? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And if they just track their cycle, they would be like, oh, I ovulated this cycle on day 35. My period might come in another few days. Yeah. So that's kind of the magic of learning this.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. That's how you like it. Yeah.
So specifically for our group, we wanted to ask you, how can knowing your cycle help with your strength training goals?
Cool. So I love that question. So kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning with the different seasons and the different phases of the cycle. Basically that's like more or less kind of what sorry, I'm going to backtrack. That's basically the whole like main point of when you're trying to figure out like how do I get my strength training goals like synced up with my cycle. It's really important to be able to tune into your own cycle. But generally speaking, at the beginning during menstruation, those first few days of your cycle, maybe days 1 through 5 when you're bleeding, generally people's energy levels are lower. And so that is a time that obviously strength training could be really, really great, but probably like low impact strength training and making sure to include a lot of rest. I know oftentimes like we want to be the same every single day and we want to like give it all our all and do everything. But during the time of menstruation, our hormone levels are literally at their lowest. And it really is a time where our energy levels are low, our hormone levels are really low, and it's time that we really need to kind of like embrace that and like own that part. And so that's a really really good time to, like I said, do like low impact strength training with lots and lots of rest is really important as well. So you kind of like don't overdo it, and also just seeing what feels right for you. And then generally, as you kind of move out from that inner winter time into that kind of pre-ovulatory and ovulatory phase, which is that like spring, summertime, you're obviously going to be slower, having more time and more energy, not time necessarily, but more space and energy inside of yourself, be doing more of that high impact workouts, some more cardio involved in there. Obviously, it's a time, I mean, this ovulation time is like an incredible time where as you're leading up to it, you have super high energy. It's a really good time to be social. And I always tell people it's a really good time to do group workouts if that's something that you're interested in, because it is a time when you do have that kind of outgoing social energy. And so yeah, and obviously you're gonna have more energy to be doing cardio and more high impact stuff. I don't know if people do like HIIT training, or I'm not like a super expert in these things, but whatever it is that feels good during that season. And then not obviously, but as we're moving out of that ovulation time, post ovulation, at the beginning, you might start feeling that kind of higher energy, the remnants of it from the ovulation phase. But then as you slowly start approaching menstruation again, your energy will start going down. And that is another time where you might want to start going back to that low impact things, maybe walking or like a slow jog or doing yoga or Pilates or whatever else feels good for you during that time. And what I always like to say is that it really is important for everyone to kind of tune into their own bodies, because I have a client that I work with and said to me, it's so weird you said that, because on cycle day 3, I like give it my all. Like I love doing my biggest run and my biggest workout, which is like when she's bleeding. And I said to her, you have to totally honor how you feel. But I said, like, maybe try slowing back a little bit. Maybe just try, like, give yourself one cycle where you kind of like tone it down a little bit during this phase and see how it feels to you. Like, do you feel more energized? Do you feel kind of like more in sync with yourself, more in tune with your body? Do you feel like does it feel nourishing to you? And I think that's a lot of this like practice is kind of knowing the fact that you are cyclical and knowing the fact that you're not supposed to be the same every day, and then seeing what feels right with that, and everyone kind of seeing their own like strength training program or schedule or what they do, and seeing how they could kind of fit in everything they want to do, but like in the right spaces in their calendar, or within their cycle,
Totally. We
Yeah,
also had a question sent to us by a member anonymously. I think it's a good time to fit it in because it's related. Um, can exercising too much affect your fertility?
totally. It's a really good question. It's a really good question. And I think that in general, it's a really individual thing, like so, so, so individual. But it's actually something I'm learning a lot more about. I'm recently doing a strength training and hormone balancing and like nutrition thing. I'm in someone else's program and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning a lot more about this now, which I'm like loving learning about. Um, but something that is true is that basically, I mean, it really depends on the person. It really depends on your starting point. It depends on what you
Mm.
normally do, what your normal regimen is. But in general, oftentimes when you're kind of doing a lot of that high impact cardio, hit training, a lot of that kind of go, 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 our body does release a lot of cortisol, which basically it is a stress hormone. And as much as like, obviously, like cardio is great and running is great and hit is great and all these different things are amazing. Um, but oftentimes when you're not doing it in like a balanced way with rest in between and along with strength training, it's not the only thing you're doing. And it also is very individual. So I don't want to kind of like say the wrong thing here, but it could oftentimes put your body too much into a stress response. Like it's going, 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 going,
Mm.
going. And when our body is in a stress response and it is in a stressful state, the last thing it's thinking about is trying to reproduce, you know? Like our body ovulates when it is like in balance. It's in a calm state. It's it doesn't see any sort of outside stressors, whether it's like being sick, whether it's like not sleeping well, or whether that's like exercising too hard and just kind of constantly being in that um like making your
Mm-hmm.
body feel like it's in fight or flight too often. And
Mm-hmm.
could definitely affect your obviously delay ovulation or have you skip an ovulation, but it really, really, really is a individual thing. And I think generally the best thing for fertility is kind of a mix of obviously cardio and whatever that looks like for you, but taking breaks and allowing your body to rest in between and say, like, I did that cardio, but like now I'm safe. Like I'm here now and like I'm safe and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And also combined with strength training is really important. And also with including rest in
Uh,
between that, which also tells your body that you are safe because basically the only way to ovulate is when our body knows that it's safe. When it feels like there's any threat,
mm.
not going to get there. So
Mm.
we're basically constant. We always want to kind of tell our body like you are safe, whether it's the way we eat, whether it's the way we're exercising. We
Mm.
want to kind of always be showing it how safe it is, so that it could basically work optimally.
So I guess sleep can also affect it, from what I'm hearing from you
Totally,
now. Yeah.
everything could affect ovulation. Everything. I mean, also like blood sugar balance and thyroid health, and obviously all any
Mm.
other hormonal thing could also influence ovulation. But also things like traveling, or obviously being jet lagged when you're not sleeping well. Um,
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, there's anything that your body sees as a stressor or a threat, it's going to kind of put ovulation on like the back burner. And like it kind of makes sense. I always give the example of like back in the day when we were being chased by lions. You're like running, 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 running. You're like being chased by a lion, and our body's in this like fight or flight response, in this like stressful state. And like the last thing our body's doing in that time is like thinking about ovulating. It's like trying to work on like getting the blood where it needs to go, conserving our energy, making sure we're running fast enough. And like the last thing it's doing is ovulating. And like sadly in today's world where a lot of us are very stressed and
Mm.
there's a lot of stressors and our body doesn't know the difference between being chased by a lion or,
Mm.
a stressful boss.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those things kind of could all influence or affect ovulation.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about self-empowerment through FAM?
Totally. Um, Yeah, so I really think that something that like one of the most empowering things about this is to kind of like that it gives women, I guess just like understanding about their bodies and their cycles. Because I think especially our cycle health, like we were taught nothing and women don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to your doctor with like any question that you have or anything about your cycle, whether it's you're experiencing period cramps, you're having PMS, you're not ovulating, you're not getting a period, you're spotting, you're anything that's going on, I would say 90% of the times will recommend you to go on hormonal birth control to like balance your cycle, which it doesn't do. It just like is a band-aid that like makes you look like you're getting a period, but it's not a period. So it doesn't actually treat anything. And I think that what's really empowering about this is that it really gives women, one, like a real understanding of their body, of what's going on, of when they're fertile, of when they're not. And like, there's so much you could learn about your body and your health just through your cycle. Like, is your cycle long enough? Are you having enough days of menstruation? Are you ovulating? Are you not? Where in your cycle is ovulation? Do you have a super long cycle, a super short cycle? And there are a lot, it's such a big world these days of like all these natural remedies and supplements and things that could really, really heal cycles. And so I think that's really empowering, is kind of giving women options, not saying to them whenever they have an issue with their cycle, whether it's any of those that I listed, like, okay, you have to go on the pill, and also empowering them that when they're trying to conceive, so many women are like just so confused by the process. And this really gives them like an understanding and really empowers them as they go through this. And also obviously for birth control, like no one like, like so many women are just like thrown on the pill or like the IUD because they're just like, that's what you got. And this really gives women like so much power. It really empowers women to like be like, whoa, like I have options, I have choices. So that's really amazing. And like, there's nothing.
And there's so many side effects to these hormones and birth control methods that you're thrown in.
Exactly. And I just think that like, I don't know, I just think that like every woman deserves to know this, and everyone that I teach like always has the same reaction. It's always just like, oh my goodness, I feel like so amazing knowing my body. I feel so amazing knowing my cycle. And it's just like, it's sad that this isn't like a basic thing that we're taught, but it's just like, that's, I think, the most empowering thing is just kind of like it feels really good to know what's going on in your body.
Amazing. So I heard you once say that cycle health is a reflection of our overall health. Can you elaborate a little bit more about this?
Yeah, totally. So there's actually a book that a lot of people love. It's called The Fifth Vital Sign by Lisa Henderson Jack, I think is this by Lisa. I think that's her last name. It's an amazing book, but that's kind of become like the term that everyone uses, is like our cycle is our fifth vital sign. And I always, as a nurse, always like to say there's 5 vital signs already. Like this would be the 6th vital sign. But like I didn't feel like fair to say that. But there are already 5 vital signs. I think the 6th vital sign, but whatever. It's the 5th, as according to this world. But basically, but there's so much to learn about your hormone levels and your overall health in your cycle. Like for example, personally, like I have hypothyroid, and when my thyroid's imbalanced, the first place I see it is my cycle. I'm having lower temps. I'm having delayed ovulation. I'm not ovulating. That's always the first place I see it. And I see this with other women as well, with whatever's going on with their cycle. When they're stressed, they see it come up in their cycle. They're having delayed ovulation, or they're having super irregular temperatures. And so it is like there's so much to learn about it. For example, there's how many days of bleeding are you having? There's how long is your cycle? There's are you ovulating? When it's in your cycle are you ovulating? How long is that luteal phase from the day post ovulation until the end of your cycle, which shows us so much about how much our body produces progesterone, which is so important, especially for pregnancy. And so there's just a lot to see within a cycle. It's a lot more than just like a period, and it's a lot more than just it just really gives us a window into our overall health, because when you are ovulating, you already could tell yourself like, okay, my body obviously is in a safe enough, relaxed enough space that it is ovulating. And then when it's not, to look for an issue. You don't have to wait until you start feeling terrible. You could already start looking, I wonder why I didn't ovulate this cycle, and kind of start digging deeper and seeing what else is going on.
So do you have to like record your body temperature like every single day, or it's just when you start seeing the mucus that you start?
You're supposed to check your temperature every single day. I'm looking if I have it here. Hold on. I could grab one second. Okay. I'm just gonna grab what I use so I could show everyone here, because it's great. Okay, sorry about that. So you do have to check your temperature every single day, but basically there are really great femtech devices, and this I love talking about because it's made in Israel. This is an Israeli made, and it's incredible because I don't know if this is like weird to say here, but I've seen a lot of the fertility awareness like groups that I'm in. People are like really anti-Israel, and they're like, we want something that will measure our temperature while we sleep, but we don't want to support Temp Drop because it's an Israeli company. But everyone's just like, there's no other option. So there's nothing else out there that does this, which is pretty
amazing.
Cool. It's amazing. I'm like obsessed with it. So this is basically a wearable thermometer. You basically wear it on like your upper arm. Like I wear it like this, like up I can't get it on. I'm not going to put it on right now. But basically, I put it on like right here. It sits like in my like close to my armpit, and there's like a little sensor here, and it basically measures your temperature overnight. So that then you don't need to kind of worry about taking it in the morning. And you basically in the morning you sync it with the app, and it will just show you your temperature.
Mm.
Yeah, and like
And you
while I'm
sleep every
saying this,
day
like
with it?
yeah, every night with it. I mean, there are times when I take breaks from it just because I'm like, whatever. I mean, it depends, but I sleep with it generally every night. Um, but something really important is that the way TempTrap works is that it has, I don't really understand the logistics of it, but it understands some sort of algorithm in your body that like it's, I don't know, it like measures your like temperature overnight, and it kind of will adjust it from day to day. Like it backtracks sometimes and adjusts the temperatures yesterday when I sync today.
Oh, wow.
But it has, yeah, it's really cool. It does have some sort of algorithm that gives you the temperature, but it never tells you when you're fertile, when you're not. That's something that I never, by the way, in anything, like there's a lot of apps that do that. There's Daisy, there's lots of things that are out there that try to tell you when you're fertile and when you're not. And I think they are terrible because especially
Mm.
women are so capable of learning this themselves. We don't need an algorithm to tell us. And two, it's very commonly wrong, very, very often wrong. So this is the only algorithm that I let happen is when it somehow algorithms my temperatures. So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we want to bring awareness on the benefits of being a strong woman. As a medical professional, what do you think are the everyday health benefits of being a strong woman?
Such a good question. So first of all, obviously there's like the basics, and like obviously for your heart health and for things like that. And I feel like I didn't even learn enough of this in school of like how important it is being a strong woman. They like didn't really teach this. And it's only something I'm learning now as I'm kind of going through the strength training program.
Mm.
And it's really new for me. Like I just got kettlebells. I'm like, this isn't
Awesome.
me. Yeah, like I don't do this normally. It's like really, really new for me. And it's been amazing. It's been so incredible. But a lot of what I'm learning about is how important strength training is for hormone balance and how important our
Mm.
muscles, like basically what this woman who's this program that I'm in, her program, she talks about how the muscle is really should be considered an endocrine organ, which is like a organ that's part of our like hormonal system. Um, and it's really, really important kind of building strong muscles, all these things of working our muscles, building them, telling our body that it's safe by resting afterwards. These things are all really important for hormone balance, for controlling inflammation, for things like that. And so I feel like I'm really a rookie at it now. Like I feel like as much as like schooling as I did as a nurse, like I'm only just starting to understand what strength training really has to do with hormonal health. So like maybe in like a few weeks from now, like I'll tell you more about it, but I'm still kind of like in the process of learning and even like experiencing it myself and seeing how good I feel as I do it, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm obsessed with a doctor online called Dr. WWLI, and her field is muscle-centric medicine. And I learned from
Cool.
her exactly that. Yeah, you should check out her content. It's amazing, and she's really passionate about teaching that. And it's from her that I also learned that like the muscle is like the largest the largest organ in our body, and it's overly underrated. And as
It
you said,
is.
it's an endocrine organ, and it like when it contracts, it like secretes stuff, and like it secretes protein that helps with like
Yeah.
brain function, like glucose disposal, like fatty acid
Yeah.
oxidations. It's like crazy.
Yeah. It's
And I
true.
feel
It's
like we
really
really need to go ahead and like share this information. It's amazing.
totally. It's true. If anyone here is and also the program that I'm in is by a woman named Adina Rubin. She's on Instagram, Adina Rubin. She's not located in Israel, but she's like all about this, about she has a program called Strength Training for Happy Hormones. That's not the one that I'm in,
Amazing.
but yeah, but it's incredible. Like really I'm learning so much about how connected my muscles are with everything else going on. And I'm really doing it. I know I spoke about my thyroid already, but I'm really doing it to try to balance out my thyroid. And it's like it feels really good, like really good, even I'm sure it's doing all the work and all the different things, but aside from that, it just feels really good, which is like most important.
Awesome. Tell Adina we
Yeah.
want to interview her.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, she for sure.
Amazing. So I know you organize different workshops around FAM. Can you give us a little more information about them and how our members can work with you and what do you cover in these workshops?
Cool. Yes. So I basically give workshops and courses. I about like all the topics that I cover. I basically do a conceiving with fam workshop that I do around usually like I'm actually doing my first one, not the first one ever, doing my first group workshop like this next week on Sunday. I normally teach this one-on-one, but I'm seeing that a lot of women kind of prefer the group setting, and also obviously it could be at a
Mm.
lower price point because I'm really trying to make it accessible for everyone. Like I don't want this to be something that is hard to get to. So there's obviously, I teach women how to conceive with fam in like kind of like a one class workshop type of thing. And then I also have a birth control course where I teach basically how women how to use this method for birth control. That runs over a longer period of time. It's usually about 6 to 8 weeks, and that also is happening in May. In like the middle of May, I'm going to be starting that one again. And I have two more soon. One of them is going to be called Flow with My Body, which is basically to connect and understand your body, but not having anything to do with family planning, because there are also so many women who aren't looking to conceive, aren't looking for birth control, but they still
Mm-hmm.
deserve to know all of this, which is why I'm kind of focusing that towards them. And then also I'm planning to do a birth control course for breastfeeding mamas, because when you're breastfeeding and wanting to use this
Wow.
method, it is a little bit more complicated. It's totally doable and it's amazing, but you really need more closer support. Like I don't want to put breastfeeding women in a group with like 8 other women, and then to kind of get lost in the track. I want it to be kind of more smaller and more intimate and more focused on breastfeeding. So that's everything going on. That's kind of what I do and things that I offer. And I also do everything one on one. I actually, up until now, have been doing mostly one on one, but lately I've been shifting more into the courses because they've been really fun. But I also do teach everything one on one. I teach for conception one on one and for birth control one on one. So yeah, that's me.
We have question here I think is relevant to what
Yeah, I
we're
see.
talking about now.
Cool.
So
Do I
they
have a
couldn't find you online. Do you have a website?
good question? I don't have a website, but I do have Organic Fertility on Facebook, and I have on Instagram also organic_fertility.
Okay,
So you can find me
we'll
there.
put it in the interview notes so they can
Cool.
all find it.
Amazing.
So I would love to give you the opportunity to talk directly to our members about anything that is important to you that like we haven't covered so far. Is there anything you would like to share with our community?
I guess like the only thing I would want to share is just for like everyone to know that like your body's awesome. It's so awesome, and I'm sure a lot of people here know that because they do a lot of strength training and are connected in their bodies in that way. But I just kind of always like to emphasize to everyone how awesome our body is and like how amazing and beautiful they are and how much they have to actually tell us and to give to us. And it's so when we listen to our bodies and we actually are listening to those ebbs and flows and those changes of when we're tired, when we're super energized, when we need to rest, when we need to go, it really just kind of builds that connection with our body even more. And yeah, I guess just that like I hope everyone really just like embraces like how amazing and powerful and strong and beautiful their bodies are. And even through the changes, even when it's like sometimes it's like, oh, why am I so tired? Oh, why am I like this? But if you could kind of just like remember a little bit like, oh, my body's trying to tell me something, like that's okay. Maybe it needs me to slow down. I think that's all.
Awesome.
Thanks.
We had a few questions that were submitted anonymously before the
Mhm.
interview that I wanted to cover. So the first one is, should we train at different intensities depending on the stages of our cycles? I think you covered this a little bit
Yeah. Do you want me to
already.
go? Yeah. Do you want me to say
Yeah,
anything? I could say like,
sure.
generally though, the answer is basically yes. And also something that is kind of I didn't mention is that the more we kind of work with our body, like train the way we should be training at our different phases of the cycle, that is really important also for hormonal health because also we're not depleting ourselves. The more we work out when we have no energy, or the more we work out when our energy levels during menstruation are low, when we really push ourselves, even though we don't really feel like it, that is really depleting our energy levels, and it has effects on our whole all the hormones in our body. So it is important to kind of try to be in sync with your cycle. And the best way to do that is to really just start. I always say start tracking it, learn the fertility awareness method, understand where you are in your cycle at different times is really helpful. And also, kind of just tuning in with yourself, seeing how you really feel, what you need, what you don't need, kind of seeing how the different phases of you need during each of those phases.
Awesome.
I think that's it.
How is our training affected by perimenopause or menopause? That's another question that was sent over
Good question.
anonymously.
Yeah.
Anonymously.
Anonymously. So to be honest, I'm definitely not the perimenopause or menopause expert. I don't work with many women who are perimenopause or menopause. But generally what's happening in those phases is our hormone levels are getting super wacky, especially our estrogen levels are just going up and down. And that obviously has effects on, obviously people know the classic things that happen, like hot flashes and breast tenderness or any other things that happen during those times. And I'm definitely not the expert, but I would imagine these things also will affect your strength training, and these things will also affect your energy levels, and it will affect just your ability to be, how much you're able to lift, how much you're able to move, how much. So, whoever, I'm sorry, I don't have like the full answer and I don't have like the details and the specifics. What I will say is that whoever is asking this, that during these phases of perimenopause and menopause, I would say just like give yourself grace and like embrace the fact that you're changing and your body is changing, and like really tune into seeing like what you need and what you could kind of give yourself and how much you could do and how little you should be doing and things like that. Just really kind of following what your body needs.
Awesome. Another anonymous question: can we use 𝗲 while doing fertility treatment?
So it's funny. Someone else asked me this question this week. It's really an individual thing, but what I always say to women is that like what I could offer them is to be able to see what's going on in their cycle. It also depends what fertility treatment. If you're getting hormonal injections, it's not going to be really super accurate. It doesn't make so much sense. Like 𝗲 for conception is really intended for before you get to that point. Maybe I have a lot of women who come to me who are trying to conceive for a very long time, whether that's a few months, whether that's a year. And they basically want to kind of understand their body and see what's going on. And a lot of it comes from a place of like just they want to know what's going on and they want to feel empowered in their body and like see like what do I need, where am I, before they kind of go to seek more help. But I would say that doing it while you're getting fertility treatments, I don't think really makes much sense. It's obviously always an option. You could see what's going on, but especially if you're getting hormonal injections, it's just not really what it's intended for as much.
I guess if you can understand what's going on, it could be empowering. So like, oh, the doctor gave me that injection, now I'm seeing like mucus or whatever. I don't know.
Totally.
Assuming.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah.
Is there any science to back up the fact that I'm strongest in the beginning of my cycle? That was another question.
Yeah, it's a question. I don't have any scientific data that backs it up, just because generally that time is considered like we are having our lowest, our hormones are at their all-time low. Generally our energy's at their all-time low. I'm not sure. I don't know any scientific data, but like I was saying beforehand, where some people feel like cycle day 3 is like their day where they have so much energy and they like love doing these like super crazy cardio workouts. Like if you feel strong, that's great, but I don't know anything behind it.
Awesome. Is protein consumption affected at all by the different phases of your cycle? Should we be consuming more carbs at various stages?
It's a good question.
Another anonymous question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The truth is that I'm not positive about this, but what I do know is that our calorie requirements do increase from ovulation until menstruation. So that is the time where it's possible people feel hungrier. It's possible that people are finding themselves eating a lot more during this time. So I would say when it comes to eating changes, that's the only one that like I really know of and I'm aware of. But I don't know I'm not sure what else about was protein consumption or absorption? What was consumption?
If the protein is consumption is affected, and if we should be consuming more carbs during the various changes.
More carbs, got it. Well, definitely post ovulation is when you're supposed to be consuming more in general. And the protein consumption, I'm not sure.
So it's totally normal if you're feeling like hungry at some point, more than like other
For
days
sure.
in your
Yeah,
cycle?
for sure. Yeah, definitely. You should be. Like, your body needs more energy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so to end the interview on a positive note, I want you to give us a few last words of inspiration from the heart. What is your motto in life and why?
Such a hard one. It's such a hard one.
I
Um,
know.
but, like, I guess, like, what's my motto in life? Um, I guess, something I work on and I try to kind of be as my motto, who knows if it is, but just that, like, we're not in control, we're not in control of as much as we wanna be in control of everything in life, in our bodies, in the world, we're not, and oftentimes it's really important just to kind of, like, listen to our bodies and be like, "Okay, I'm not in control. I am, like, going to see what's happening, and I'm going to just observe my body," like, it's kind of about, like, not being oftentimes I have women who are struggling to ovulate, and it takes them a really long time. It could take them,
Mm,
they have super long cycles. I would try to encourage them to not try to control it, not try to be like, oh, when's it going to be? When? Like trying, just kind of being like, I am an observer. I am an observer. Let me just relax.
mm,
I'm not in control. Um,
mm.
so I would say that I definitely try to do that in my body, in life, in things like that. Of just like I'm not in control here, and like let me just try to observe and I don't know. I don't know if that was a motto, but I think that's a nice kind of way to see our bodies, especially when like, if we can't lift so heavy one day, like it's okay, or like if we didn't reach this certain goal that we thought we were going to reach today, like it's okay. Like my body needed some rest today and like maybe tomorrow, just like be nice
Amazing.
to
I
ourselves.
just,
I think that's it, to be nice to ourselves, you know?
yeah, to be compassionate.
Yeah,
We just got another anonymous question if you're ready.
totally.
Is it true that a hot bath can kill sperm?
No. I mean, generally, like hot tubs and saunas and things like that do tend to like lower sperm count. So they like say like try not to do those things when you're trying to conceive. It definitely doesn't kill sperm. Like don't use it as birth control. If you're trying to get pregnant, like
Mm.
it doesn't kill sperm. Like it's not like your partner can't take a bath, but obviously don't do it every single day all the time. Like,
Or
you know,
can you take a bath after you had,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, sex to
Yeah, yeah,
get pregnant?
yeah, totally. I mean, the
Okay, so
sperm
it's
gets to the egg
myth.
so quickly. It gets to the egg so quickly, like within a matter of like a few seconds that I mean there are a lot of like things people do. Like some people like sit with their like butt elevated and like lay there for an hour, you know what I mean? Like everyone has their thing. I mean, it's good to like lay there for a few minutes, but like it gets there pretty quick. And like I always try to give people the example, like no one could prevent pregnancy by just like, you know, having sex in the bathtub or like getting up so quickly and peeing, like that doesn't work.
Right.
When you kind of see it the opposite way, you're like, "Oh, like, yeah, I could definitely get pregnant."
Actually, we have another anonymous question. Does ovulation happen before or after the egg is released?
Well, ovulation is the egg sorry if I didn't make that clear from the beginning. I feel like I should have started with that. Ovulation is the egg being released from the ovary. So it goes from the ovary and it goes into the fallopian tubes. I should have a photo, but basically the uterus kind of sits, let's say like this is the uterus. On either side are fallopian tubes, and those basically connect to the ovaries that are kind of these little like balls here, and then the fallopian tubes, and then
Mm,
the uterus in the center. So the egg goes from the ovary up into the fallopian tube, and it basically sits there waiting for that sperm to meet it or not, and then eventually it just dissolves.
cool. So
Yeah,
that ends all of our questions, Talia. Thank you so much for
amazing.
joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And I think you can tell our listeners again, like how to find you if they want to get in contact with you, and maybe
Yeah,
give a little bit of more detail about the course that they can sign up to. That you're, I don't
yeah.
know if there's still space available on
Totally.
Sunday,
No,
but
there is. Well, Sunday there, yeah. So basically, you can find me on Facebook at Organic Fertility. You could also message me. My name is Talia Schubert. Or on Instagram, also organic_fertility. Um, and I have a course coming up this Sunday for women trying to conceive. I have one spot left, and because it's really, I do small courses, especially for that. Like generally, most of my courses are pretty small, so I have one spot left for Sundays. And then in mid-May, I have a group for birth control open, which is basically learning how to use this method as birth control. And yeah, and I also work one-on-one. So if there's none of those work for anyone, we could also work one-on-one. And I think that's me.
And I think it's worth it to include that the course is not just, the course itself. Like you help women
Yeah.
go through their charts and everything after that.
Totally. And exactly. All my one-on-one clients and all my groups also include follow-up support. So I teach everything. And what I always like to tell people is that I could sit here with you for 6 hours and say everything, but it doesn't really matter because until you actually start practicing this method, you won't really learn it. You really need to go home and you need to really start charting and seeing what comes up for you. What does your body look like? And that's basically when questions come up, and that's when I'm here to answer them. So that's kind of a lot of the way my class is structured. I kind of give information, but then I say, now go home, let me know when you have questions. And so I provide support for everyone in all my classes. That's basically what's included.
Awesome. Cool. So Talia, thank you
Cool.
so much again. It was great
Thank you
having
for
a
having
conversation
me.
with you.
It was great. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.